Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sara Gonzales, joined by three very manly men.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.
Yes. Glenn, what's your top story?
I want to tell you about Blake Harris. I want to tell you the ultimate American entrepreneurial story that ends just like you would expect it to end in this era of America. And no one knows it.
Until today.
Until today.
All right, Stu.
The border crisis. It's not just a right-wing talking point anymore.
Okay. And
Speaking of entrepreneurs, I want to talk about one of America's greatest capitalists, Mr. Bernie Sanders.
All right, a lot to get into there.
He loves small businesses, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
He does.
First, we want to thank our sponsor, realestateagentsitrust.com. Glenn, you started this company.
I started this company out of frustration because I knew I wasn't alone, and I'm thrilled with this. We have really impacted people's lives. This is not a real estate company. This is really kind of more of a matchmaker service, really. If you don't know who to get to sell your home, you have to have an expert. And at least, I mean, haven't we all, when you sell your house, do you know who the expert is?
No.
Do you know?
No.
Yeah. It's really very simple. There are three things you really have to look for. And I learned them by working with the 500 best agents, according to the Wall Street Journal, the 500 best agents in the country. These people make more than every other real estate agent in their area usually combined. And it's because they just do these things. So we've said, hey, can we send some of our listeners over to you if they're looking to sell your house? That's what we do. But we've taken the extra step. We've also, they have to be fans of the show. They have to have your kind of sensibilities because you have to trust this person. And especially if you're looking for a new house, oh my gosh, you don't want to be trapped in a car with somebody who just hates Donald Trump or who are just, I can't believe that Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton aren't queens of the universe. So just go to realestateagentsitrust.com, find the right real estate agent to buy or sell your next home. It's realestateagentsitrust.com.
All right, so you said the American entrepreneurial story.
So one of the guys on my production staff brought us a book a couple weeks ago and said, you have to read this. Now, I wasn't familiar with his last book. What's his last book?
It's called Console Wars, and I had him on Wonderful World of Stu at one point, which is it's just a really in-depth telling of basically Nintendo versus Sega in the 90s. It's really interesting if you lived through that era. And actually, Seth Rogen's making it into I think a movie or a series now.
And he's really a good writer. And as he said on the air today, I write with my grandmother in mind. If my grandmother doesn't understand, then I have to rewrite it. Okay, and so.
He tries to de-nerd it as much as possible.
Okay. So what he wanted to do is he set out to write a book in, I think, 2012 or 13 about Oculus Rift. Okay, so Oculus was started by this guy who, I didn't even know his name. Blake Harris.
No, that's the author's name.
Oh, no. What was the Oculus Rift
I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
I can't remember
Palmer
this guy.
Luckey?
Yes, Palmer Luckey.
Yeah.
So
That's his real name, by the way.
Yes.
Good, I know. I was like, wait, that can't be right.
So this is Palmer Luckey. He's like 19 years old. He's living in a trailer. It's like a beaten down, awful trailer, and he's making Oculus, okay? He cracks the code. Nobody else has been able to crack the code for artificial reality, which is amazing.
Does
Okay?
it from scratch in a trailer that they describe as basically out of Breaking Bad. Like that. This is an amazing story.
Have you seen the pictures of it?
Oh, yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's woof, okay? So he gets the attention of Mark Zuckerberg. When he gets the attention of Mark Zuckerberg, Zuck loves it and says, I'll buy it for $2 billion, but you have to come with it, okay? Now, I'm with Zuckerberg right around the time that he's buying this, and I know he is so proud of this because he was very upset that I couldn't stay. He wanted to show Oculus, and I wanted to see it, but I had to catch a plane back. And they were all about Oculus. This is the future. Artificial reality is the future. It's amazing. Okay. Then Trump. Then it comes time for the election. This kid makes a $10,000 anonymous donation to a group that is buying some billboards across the country with pro-Trump messages on it. Well, somehow or another, somebody in Silicon Valley finds out about this and outs him and says he's a Trump supporter. And then The stories come out that he is the guy behind all of the wicked memes on the internet. That Facebook's Oculus guy is responsible for all of this. So if you see these horrible memes online, it's him. Okay, none of that is true.
Yeah, needless to say, it came from the Daily Beast, so you can probably assume none of it was true.
So none of it's true, but everybody's buying into it. He wants to write a note that says, I did not do that. I would never do that. I am a supporter of Donald Trump, but not all Donald Trump supporters are bad. Zuck, it goes all the way to Zuck, and Zuckerberg looks at that and says, okay, you're not sending this out. Here's what you are sending out. You're voting for Gary Johnson, okay? He rewrites the whole thing and says, this is what you're sending out. I'm not for Trump. I've never been for Trump. I'm for Gary Johnson. I'm a libertarian. This is illegal stuff, okay? Yeah. Paper trail everywhere. So Blake is this really well-known writer. He's 2012, long before the election. He gets full access to everything at Facebook because he's a great writer, well-known, was voted by like Publishers Weekly and everybody else Book of the Year, his book before this. He has total access. He's a fan of Facebook and he's a lefty. So Zuck has nothing to worry about, he thinks. This guy goes in and then he starts to see, wait a minute. He's telling you that you can't be for Trump. He sees the corruption inside of Facebook. He's written this new book. It took him 2 years longer for him to deliver it to the publisher than he expected because he wanted to make sure it was right. He can't find a job. No one will give him an interview. And it's an amazing story. This guy was fired. Oculus Rift is no longer his. It's kind of in the trash can now with Facebook in a way. Zuckerberg did illegal stuff. It shows the corruption in there. It shows how you do not want this company. He can't get an interview. We had him on the air today. This is the first real interview he's done. His book was 33,336 when we interviewed him. And I heard his story, and I said to the audience, you have to reward this guy, because this author went on and said, I have to tell you, I've talked to my journalist friends. I'm a lefty. I've talked to them and they said, big deal. The guy liked Donald Trump. So what? Who cares? Shut up. And they've ostracized him for telling the truth. And he's just crazy. No one will buy his book. He hasn't another job. He's got nothing. I said to the audience, buy this book. Show him that we appreciate people who tell the truth, let the chips fall where they may. Just before we went on, somebody came in. It is now number 6 overall.
That is amazing.
From 33,336 on Amazon to number 6 because of the Glenn Beck radio audience. We need to make this book number 1. And every single conservative show needs to have this guy on. The story is unbelievable.
And
unbelievable.
That also shows the power of the grassroots movement.
Does.
I mean, it really does.
It does.
Yeah, and it shows how bad the media is. I mean, because, look, this guy Console Wars is not a political book at all. This is not a political book. I mean, 2/3 of it really have nothing to do with politics whatsoever. He was going to turn in a book that was about virtual reality technology and the kind of cool culture and backstories, which are fascinating. Instead, it wound up having this extra bit put on, which is basically this guy gets vilified. He didn't do any of the things he was accused of. He said on the air he would stake his life on it that he didn't do any of these things that he was accused of. That's how sure he was.
He said, I took an extra 2 years to make sure. He was a huge fan of Zuckerberg and a huge fan of Facebook. He
totally
is
turned on him.
Totally turned. He's like, this is an evil company. They're doing bad stuff. Zuckerberg is in on all of it. He knows.
Did he say why Palmer Luckey got fired? Because he went along with it at first, right? And then he got fired later?
He did.
He was told that he had to take a vacation. So he took a vacation for a month and then played along and expected to be rehired. Then they had this big corporate conference call, and he found out on the conference call that he had asked for another 2 weeks of vacation, which he hadn't done. And he's like, uh-oh, and then they fired him. They let him go.
And the main thing, too, to point out here is that this is not just speculation. He has the actual emails from Mark Zuckerberg doing these things.
It's in the book.
Now, you can't force an employee, under any business, any situation, you can't force an employee to say that they're voting for someone else and release statements in their voice that, I mean, look, he agreed to it, wanting to keep his job. So there's that, but I mean, this is stuff that is, if it's not borderline legal, it is illegal. Blake Harris said it is illegal. And this is stuff that they have lots of evidence for. I mean, think about this for a second. And I mean this as a criticism. I expect the mainstream media to avoid this sort of thing, though that it's this guy who's a left-winger who has incredible credibility going to the same people he talked to about his last book and them saying to him, he said, he was giving us quotes like, "That's not the kind of political discrimination we're looking for." I mean, this is incredible. So, but I expect that from the left-wing media. The right-wing media just doesn't maybe not know about it, but the fact that this isn't a big story is incredible. I mean, Covington is a good example of this. Like, that was a huge story for the right. That's one kid. He's matched up with a ridiculous, situation with a Native American and a drum, and it was a story for 2 weeks. This is a guy who invented a technology bought for $2 billion out of a trailer, and then has revolutionized this entire world of virtual reality. And he got fired from a company that is on everyone's radar screen for doing shady things and having all sorts of negative activities and having too much power and wielding that power in weird ways. And they fire him because of his political beliefs, and even the right hasn't picked up on it. I hope that changes. It looks like it is happening today, considering his book going up that high.
Yeah, I urge everybody in the audience to buy this book and then tell whoever you listen to. I mean, I listen to Chad's podcast. You should have this guy on.
I will have him on, absolutely.
It's amazing.
And I want to go on record as saying, I think the book will be #1 by tomorrow morning at the latest, but I want to go on record as saying I'm the one responsible for all the mean memes. I'm putting them together in a book form.
Right.
And it's going to be endorsed by Glenn Beck, and we're going to the top too.
Yeah, right.
We're taking it, and it will be the story that no one else has heard.
I think I would push a mean meme, the worst memes out there. I think I would.
Meanest memes on the planet.
Yeah.
You're welcome, America.
Mean memes.
Yeah.
Right to the top. Back in a minute.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like mean memes.
Mean memes. Left can't meme.
Stu, you said that now there's a crisis at the border.
Yes. I mean, you remember those right extremists who used to say that there was a crisis on the border.
Very far right.
Oh, yeah, very far right. And for a while, it was people, go back to the emergency declaration even, right? Like, there's the opposition to the emergency declaration broke into two categories. Our take on it, I think a lot of us here were saying, like, look, I completely agree there's a crisis on the border, but you shouldn't go about it this way. That was not the left's disagreement with the emergency declaration. They just said, you can't do this because it's not really an emergency. It's not really a crisis, which I always found really interesting. Well, that's gone. I mean, listen to the mainstream media. They are now calling it a crisis, and it's so obvious they can't avoid it anymore. The new numbers came out from for the border and the crossings, the total crossings and apprehensions at the border. And they're staggering. I mean, we've always known that we've had a big time problem on the border. I mean, it was one of the reasons Trump got elected, right? It's much worse than when he got elected. Here we go. This is the total crossings. They are up 375% year to year. I mean,
that is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. In a time that we've been told over and over again that we don't have a crisis, it is very strange to see. We have now a total. The thought was it may even hit 100,000 immigrants being apprehended. It came in a little bit less than that, 92,607.
Remember, Obama's crisis that got us down to the border was 60,000.
Yeah.
That was the highest month.
Highest it got. This is, by the way, the highest in 12 years. Now, previously, there were higher numbers many years ago, back 20 years ago or so. But those numbers were almost exclusively single men or men by themselves looking for work, right? That's what it was. This is different. This is families. And if you remember the whole family separation issue that we dealt with Jeff Sessions when he was in AG, he said, we have a crisis at the border, and we are going to now separate families from, parent and child. And there was a little bit of a difference between what Obama and Bush did on this, as we discussed at the time. But he was essentially expanding an existing way of dealing with this as a deterrent. And he came out and he said, if you don't want to be separated, don't come, because that is what's going to happen to you. They tried to make it into a deterrent. So they attempted that, and at that point, it had hit 8,000 families per month crossing the border. Sessions implemented that plan, and it worked. It actually held them at about 8,000. Then, if you remember, Donald Trump, and with a lot of media pressure, reversed that policy and said, "Look, we just can't do this anymore. We got to figure out another way." Well, it's slowly escalated ever since, and it has risen now. In this last month, 53,000 families cross. I mean, it's an incredible amount, and I guess that means in family members, 53,000. But you're talking about almost 7 times the problem from when Sessions was there. And so it's interesting to look at this in a couple different ways, I think. One, I think there's a way to look at this and be somewhat critical of the way Trump handled that situation. I mean, look, he fired Sessions for other reasons. He was not happy with him. Sessions did implement a hardline strategy that Trump eventually backed down from. And since then, the problem has gone up 7 times. I think there's an analysis there from the right that actually shows Trump probably should have done something else. He's tried a lot of things, and none of them have worked. That being said, when you do a lot of things and none of them work, what do? You switch the people out. And he has done that. He hasn't stayed loyal to people that he didn't think could get the job done. There's a lot of chaos right now in trying to figure out who's going to be the replacements. But I mean, when you're in a situation and you go down the road, it's like when you have new information, you change your mind. That's what you do. And he's changed his mind. He's bringing in new people to try to do this a different way. And hopefully they can get it under control. They have tried several plans that Congress has not allowed to try to get this under control as well. But I mean, I think if you asked Trump in an honest moment, what is the biggest regret of your presidency, the fact that he has not been able to get this under control probably tops his list.
I will tell you that I think, again, if we have to look at this as military strategy, you have to cut off the supply line. That's how you choke an army to death. You cut off their supply line. The supply line is not Honduras. It's not south of the border. It's Chicago, Illinois, as we pointed out yesterday. It is George Soros. You have to turn the guns away from Honduras, and you have to. Well, I don't want to say that we're going to shoot any Hondurans.
These metaphors need to be improved. Yeah. The marshmallow guns need to be.
You need to stop focusing there. I mean, that's important. So you have to watch it, but don't put all of your eggs in that basket. You've got to go after the source of the money, the ideology, the people who are recruiting and telling these countries, oh, go ahead. Because what they're trying to do is overwhelm the system. You'll notice the press is now saying that it is a problem in our country. It's a real problem. But what are they saying? Release them. Release them into the country. That is insanity.
And they're doing that, though. I mean, they are actually releasing them into the country.
But that's why they don't believe that it's a crisis. Because to think it's a crisis would mean that you would have to think that allowing people into the country without stopping them and knowing who they are is a bad thing.
But mark my words, they're going to change the dialogue on this. They're going to make it a crisis, and then we're evil for not just releasing them into the country.
Yeah. No, it is a manufactured crisis. And look, bottom line, I can live without avocados. I get all of them from Jamie Foxx and Tom Selleck now, and they're all manufactured right here. They're grown right here in America. Yeah. So, but it's a crisis. But you're exactly right on that, Glenn, because it's not. America didn't just all of a sudden become a great free country overnight, and then all of a sudden this border crisis goes up 375%. It gets to a point where someone out there is manufacturing this thing and making these people come. Because otherwise, how do you explain that growth?
Right. Last word. They keep saying these are asylum claims, right? I mean, and if they're asylum claims, we've seen a lot of reporting of the horrible things going on in Venezuela. And we've argued that it would be a great thing for Trump to start taking asylum claims from Venezuela to show how bad socialism is. I think that would actually be a really good move. Mm-hmm. But where's the reporting on how bad it is in Honduras and Guatemala? These countries don't have Venezuela-level crises. Mm-hmm. That's not what the situation they're in. That's what asylum is designed for. And the idea that people are now obviously just using it as a loophole in the law to get in here, it's a shame. And it's going to wind up eventually, even Democrats will come along to the point where, look, we need to change these laws because it's going to be overwhelming.
Yeah. All right, we're going to get into Bernie when we come back.
Ooh, sounds
scary.
Sorry.
I don't want to get into Bernie.
All right, Chad, what you got for us on Bernie?
Well, let me go back to his point for a second, talking about the border crossings. Even Bernie, in a speech here, last week said, there's poverty all over the world, and we can't just keep letting this come. So even he came out and said, "Look,
I was amazed by that.
There's an issue," and it's you got to see it in the context of what he was saying, because that was not this only point he was trying to make about that. He's still Bernie, so don't get me wrong. But Bernie, Mr. Breadlines himself, has now come out and defended his wealth. Yes, he's a millionaire. Can't deny that. Owns multiple homes. Now, this is the guy that wants to take all of your wealth, all of your money. He wants to give free education. He wants universal basic income. He wants people to have free, Medicare for all, and all of these things. But why are you a millionaire? How, as a senator, and of course, Bernie says, well, if you wrote a best-selling book, you too would be a millionaire. Well, that's easy to do, right, Glenn? Just go out and write a best-selling book.
A best-selling book and become a millionaire.
Become a millionaire.
His platform as a senator has nothing to do with him being able to sell that many books.
So, and you were on the podcast today on my show, and we brought this topic up, and we were, here's a guy who is a socialist. He had his honeymoon in Russia, for crying out loud. The guy, exotic Russia. Come to Russia. It's such a romantic getaway. I've been there a time or two. I thought I was going to get murdered. You have this guy who's a socialist, and he's defending his capitalism because he wrote a book in an economy that allows you to write a book and become a millionaire and be successful. So the hypocrisy of the whole thing, again, it's one of these. It's not for us, it's for you. Like, we're going to be compassionate socialists and apply it to you, but the ruling class, no, we're good. We're going to continue doing the thing. So, I look at a situation like this, and I want to just say to the American people who would even consider this idea that you're willing to give the government so much power that has this much hypocrisy, because let's face it, if they can give you everything, they can take everything. And a guy like Bernie, who will look you in the face and say, I don't believe in capitalism, but I've used capitalism to become a very wealthy man, and I'm not going to give it up, but it's not good for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. The scariest part too is if you happen to watch the Glenn Beck program right before this, you saw the chalkboard and you were talking about what president would come. What was the reaction to Trump? Because the pendulum swings back and forth. Right? We like a calm guy, and then we like a guy who's loud. Go back and forth. The identifications there, the characteristics you identified, it was Bernie Sanders. And that's terrifying. Hopefully, that's not going to happen. But Sanders still leads the polls. All of his scandals have pretty much been out there for the last 4 years. He benefits from running against Hillary last time. He's got lots of money. He still has energy behind him. It's hard for me to imagine him winning. How does a self-avowed socialist win a presidential election in the United States of America? But I feel like anything can happen now.
We live in a post-fact era.
We do.
Right? It doesn't matter that he says I wrote a book, because people don't know enough, especially the younger generation doesn't know enough about what capitalism actually is. They just know that it's a dirty word.
Or what books are.
I got to get into this whole book business. I'm telling you, man. I hear it's lucrative. Yeah. You can make 6 cents on the dollar off of every sale. Or
if you're lucky,
6 cents for the $10.
I was going to say.
6 cents from every sale of every book. It's a crazy deal. But come on, people.
How can Bernie Sanders not just give away enough money so he has $999,000? You just got to get under $1 million if you're Bernie Sanders to be at all credible. And they
don't care though.
They
don't care.
He says he's going to release his tax returns on the 15th of April. We'll see.
Can't wait to see.
I don't care.
I don't care either.
Do you care about his taxes?
I like to make fun of him, so yes.
Do you care about his taxes?
I'm with Stu.
All right, we'll see you guys in overtime.